My name is Vanessa Cole. He said it like it was a joke, like it was clever. Like reducing my career to a punchline in front of a crowded dinner table was something everyone should laugh at. No one did. The room fell silent. Forks paused midair. Conversation stopped. Every face at the table turned toward me, waiting to see what I would do. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I didn't give him the reaction he wanted. I thanked my aunt for dinner, stood up, took my coat, and walked out. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. Because a few weeks later, my father started a new job. And on his first morning there, he stepped into the lobby, glanced at the executive board displayed across the wall, and found my face staring back at him. That was the moment. He finally understood exactly who I was, and exactly how badly he had misjudged me. To understand how we got there, you need to understand something first. My father had spent my entire life measuring people by titles, income, and status. To him, success was only real if it looked impressive from the outside. Prestige mattered more than substance. Appearance mattered more than truth. He believed in rank, in hierarchy, in making sure everyone knew exactly where they stood, and according. To him, I had always fallen short. It started when I was young. No matter what I achieved, it was never enough. A good school wasn't the right school. A solid job wasn't the right job. A promotion was always too small, too late, too unimpressive. Every milestone I reached became proof, in his mind, that I should have reached something better. He never asked what I actually did. He never cared enough to learn. He heard operations and translated it into something small, something beneath him, something easy to dismiss. He told relatives I worked in maintenance, said I handled supplies, called my job glorified cleaning with a corporate title attached. He said it often enough that eventually the family repeated it too. No one asked me if it was true, and I stopped correcting them. Because I learned early that people who are committed to misunderstanding, you rarely change their minds just because you offer facts. So I let them think what they wanted, and I kept building my life. While they reduced my work to a joke, I built a career in operational leadership. I learned how systems failed, how money leaked through inefficiency, how entire companies quietly bled through poor planning and neglected infrastructure. I learned how to fix what other people ignored. Became the person companies called when they needed someone to untangle expensive problems no one else knew how to solve. I redesigned broken systems, cut waste, improved performance, increased efficiency, turned neglected departments into measurable assets. I built a reputation. Then I built authority. Eventually, I became the executive overseeing operations across multiple regions, responsible for budgets large enough to make most people pause and teams large enough to require real leadership. Later, I was invited to sit on corporate boards, then another, then another. By the time my father was still telling people I worked some vague little support job, I was reviewing executive proposals, approving strategic initiatives, and helping govern the direction of companies worth more than he ever imagined. He never knew. Not because it was hidden, because he never looked. That holiday dinner was the first time I'd attended one of those family gatherings in years. I should have trusted my instincts and stayed home, but my mother asked me to come, and something in her voice made me say yes. The evening started the way those evenings always did. Too much polish, too much performance, too many carefully rehearsed conversations about success. My father was in his usual form, holding court, in the living room, speaking loudly enough for everyone to hear, telling stories designed less to entertain than to establish status. By dinner, he'd had enough wine to become theatrical. By dessert, he was ready for an audience. He tapped his glass with a fork and stood. Everyone looked up. He smiled the way people smile when they think they're about to be charming. He began with a toast about ambition, about achievement, about real careers. Then he turned toward me. And to my daughter, he said, lifting his glass slightly, who finally found her calling. A pause. A smile. She's in facilities now. That's corporate language for janitor, for anyone wondering. Silence. Absolute silence. You could feel the discomfort move across the table like a wave. He expected embarrassment, defensiveness, maybe anger. He expected me to explain myself. Instead, I stood, smoothed my napkin, set it beside my plate. Thanked my aunt for dinner, looked at him just long enough to let the silence settle where it belonged. Then I walked out. He called after me, of course, one last jab thrown at my back. I didn't turn around. I left him sitting in the echo of his own performance. That night, sitting in my car with my hands on the steering wheel, I made a decision. I was done trying to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding me. I stopped caring whether he ever approved. And after that, my life got quieter, cleaner, better. My mother eventually left him. That part surprised no one except him. Without an audience to dominate, he became smaller, bitter, defensive, angry in the way insecure men often become when no one is left to absorb the weight of their ego. He blamed me for the divorce, blamed me for her leaving, blamed me for the fact that neither of us were willing to keep shrinking just to preserve his comfort. I let him blame whoever he needed to blame. I had work to do, and while he stayed exactly where he was, I kept moving. The irony arrived later in the form of a hiring packet, a routine review, a standard approval process. One more candidate in a stack of names crossing my desk, until I opened the file and saw his. My father had applied for a mid-senior logistics role at one of the companies where I sat on the board. He had no idea. Of all the companies in the city, he had applied to one where I held governance oversight. I stared at his resume for a long time. He was qualified, experienced, capable, appropriate for the role, and for one brief moment, I understood exactly how easy revenge could be. One quiet rejection, one private refusal, one polite corporate dismissal. He never would have known why, but I didn't do it. I removed myself from the hiring process immediately, declared the conflict, recused. Myself in writing, told HR to evaluate him on merit and send me only the final recommendation. He was interviewed. He was reviewed. He was approved. And when the paperwork reached me for final sign-off, I signed it. Not because he deserved kindness, because ethics matter most when it would be easier to ignore them. He got the job fairly, and he walked into that building on his first day believing he had earned a fresh start. Then he saw the board. Wall 7 framed executive portraits, names engraved beneath each one. He scanned from left to right, and then he stopped, because there I was. Professional portrait. Title beneath my name, board member, operations committee chair. Mine was not a name tucked away in some internal directory, not a quiet mention in a forgotten memo. It was mounted in brass and glass 3 stories high, visible, permanent, undeniable. He froze in the lobby staring at my face while employees passed around him. And for the first time in his life, he had to confront the possibility that I had never been what he called me, only what he was too arrogant to understand. He texted me before lunch. We need to talk. I let him wait. Then I agreed to meet. He arrived looking older than I remembered. Tired, pale, stripped of the certainty he'd worn like armor my entire life. His first question was the one I expected. You knew I applied. Why didn't you stop it? Because that was how he understood power. As something personal, something to weaponize. I told him the truth. Because you were qualified. Because I don't make professional decisions based on personal resentment. Because I am not you. That landed harder than anything else I said. So I said the rest too. I told him exactly what my career was. What I managed, what I built, what I earned, what he had spent years mocking without ever once bothering to understand. I told him he had mistaken ignorance for superiority, cruelty for standards, control for love, and I told him what came next. If he wanted a relationship with me, it would happen under conditions. Therapy, real accountability, A written apology to my mother, a public apology to the family he used as an audience when he humiliated me. No excuses. No revisions, no self-pity. And if he couldn't do that, then we would remain exactly what we were in that moment, a board member and an employee. Nothing more. For once in his life, he had no clever response, no cutting remark, no performance, just silence. And that was the first honest thing he had given me in years. He eventually agreed. Not because one conversation repaired what decades had broken. It didn't. Some damage doesn't disappear because someone finally decides to acknowledge it. He could apologize. He could change. He could spend years learning how to become less harmful than he had been. That still would not return the years he spent teaching me my worth was conditional. But that was never the point. The point was never revenge. It was truth. Not loud. Not dramatic. Not vindictive. Just visible. He spent years trying to define me by what he refused to understand. In the end, all it took was one wall, one title, and one unavoidable truth in brass beneath. My name for that lie to collapse all on its own.